So look, it's been a while since I made a YouTube video, and I know that's disappointing for some. It's certainly disappointing for me, and I think there's a lot to learn to be done in retrospect. I was definitely not prepared for the success of the sexualization and body image in video game series, and I'm very grateful to you guys and gals for making it the success that it was. So where to go from here? Well, I think I have the answer, but you're going to have to let me cook. I'm doing something here. At first, I dabbled with a few other topics. I personally think my Taiwan terror cults and video games was my finest work as a creator, but it never took off in the same way, which is fine. You came for the boobs. More than likely you stayed for the boobs. Or you came to protest the boobs by making my video more popular, which leads me to wonder why you clicked on the video in the first place. I'm gonna keep it $1.50, it's probably for the boobs. I also tried my hand at community engagement. It's a fine line. You can really lose yourself in the comments in a good and bad way. It can almost be paralyzing in a sense. Obviously, I made the aftermath video addressing the larger points being made, but it's impossible to take a scalpel to all of it and discern who is wasting your time and who has genuine thoughts. Well, okay, the ones that are screaming that I'm a Nazi and dehumanizing are pretty easy to discern. At one point, I noticed that a lot of people are talking about how a lot of sexualization is very similar and fails to stand out, and I wrote an entire script on lines, how the human eye works, how the color wheel works, how color affects our blood pressure, but holy moly, sometimes it's like you're trying to describe the spelling of the sound of the letter A. Do people even want to know this stuff? I don't know, let me know in the comments. Anyways, some time passed and I was hanging out with a friend eating some meat pies as two Australians would, and he says, "Hey, Liv, check this out." What he showed me I was not prepared for. It was an L2D model of the character Unzen from a game called Azur Lane. You may recognize it from the Aftermath video. It had some controversy for its really big boobs, but then, you know, the CEO turned out to be a girl boss and the complaints got real quiet real quick. Anyways, I thought to myself, this is a real situation here. I think I'm gonna have to study this in great detail. Now, Azur Lane is a lot of things, but I'm just going to hit you with the highlights because the meat is for another video. Do you know what your friend will never tell you before you start playing the game? They always show you the amazing skins and the best ship girls. Yeah, the girls are mostly ships that were built in World War I and World War II. Keep up. Anyways, you think you're getting these full figures, but you start off with a rat pack of little girls. So really, the first port of call is getting rid of the little girls. It's then that you're going to notice something. Ships with more armor or a lot of health tend to have a wealth of assets. Take Surkov, for example, which was a fascinating French submarine. Submarines are usually represented as little girls, but Surkov is quite ample. But why? I mean, it's not like armored submarines existed. Well, Surkov was built in a time where battleships were something akin to nuclear weapons. There just wasn't anything that could practically carry guns as powerful as what you could put on a battleship. And yeah, hindsight being 2020, the idea of battleships being super weapons is laughable. But they were, and everyone wanted to stop the escalation of bigger and stronger battleships constantly being built to one-up competing nations. So they imposed some treaties that would curb the escalation. But do you know what they didn't impose limits on though? Submarines. So the French had the clever idea of putting two 203mm cannons in a turret and sticking it on this quote-unquote cruiser submarine. The story goes on, and I recommend you read up on it because it's an interesting story. So I was learning that the boobs aren't just great, but they also tell a story. But I mean, so do the words of the characters themselves. For example, Zara constantly mentions that she doesn't like nighttime.
それが船の上じゃなければね。
And that's because she was basically lit up by an Allied flare and pummeled at a point blank by Allied battleships. Really a tragedy for the people that were aboard that vessel. So I started with the promise of lewd images. I transitioned to merely trying to rid myself of my rat pack of little girls. And in the end, I became enthralled by the stories of the actual ships themselves. I was spending hours every night listening to YouTube series and documentaries because I was hungry to know more. I mean, the fact that Prince Eugen survived the entirety of World War II and a nuclear blast is both sad and amazing, and it just personifies these machines really well. Now, here is where we come to our problem. You see this ship girl? This is Formidable, an HMS aircraft carrier, and you can probably tell that she had an armored runway. And well, yes, I Well, I married this ship. But like whatever, she's adorable.
指揮官、ごきげんよう。今日も一緒にケーキを食べません？
My issue is that while she is a super rare ship, there is another tier above super rare, and that's ultra rare. Now, in my opinion, HMS Formidable should be an ultra rare ship, and she should have an L2D skin, but she does not. Now, you remember how I was telling you that the CEO of Azur Lane is a girl boss? Well, her name is Shu Yinlin, and now I need to negotiate with her to plead for her to give Formidable an ultra rare retrofit. Here's my problem. How do I do this without sounding as crazy as I currently do in this video? Because I know this company probably gets tons of messages that sound just like this one and they go straight in the bin. In my sexualization and body image video, I said it and I believe it. If you want something to change, you should get in there and be the change. I still remember having this epiphany while playing a board game called Wingspan where you collect birds and you collect eggs and whatnot. I was playing it with my family and I was thinking, what if the birds had 406mm cannons? So I did what any rational person would do. I started making a card game about World War II era naval engagements. Okay, it's not what a rational person would do, but it actually kills two birds with one stone. The truth is that I've been dying to get back into making video games for quite a long time, but it can be very difficult with a full-time job, yada yada yada, you know how it goes. It's a great excuse. But figuring out a card game in terms of mechanics and prototyping is much easier, or at least it has its pros and cons. So I get to work on something that I find fascinating and really enjoy, and then one day when I am in a meeting to work with Azur Lane for the crossover, I can respectfully ask Lin Shuyin to please raise HMS Formidable to the greatness that she deserves. So that's how it started, but how is it going? Well, the game's working title is currently Project BB, BB being the naval designation for a battleship. It's also kind of a baby in Chinese, but whatever. It's a 1v1 or 2v2 trading card game that incorporates dice roll combat, fleet building, resource management, and a little bit of high-level strategy. Now, obviously, any game that you make needs to be balanced and fun, yada yada yada. Of course, those things are essential objectives, but the crux of what I'm trying to do with this game is match the history of what some of these naval vessels did with how they are characterized within the game. I know, hardly original, Azur Lane does this so well, but where I can actually expand on this idea is by adding the war doctrines of the time. For example, Japan really believed that because they could not compete with the US in terms of production, they needed to seek out and coax the US into a full engagement with aircraft carriers. They believed that if they won decisively in a single battle, they could snowball that victory and gain the upper hand. Now, I'm an English speaker in Australia, so obviously that didn't work out for them, but it might work out for you in Project BB. That's the idea at least. So far, playtesting has been surprisingly stable and balanced. AI art has been very helpful for prototyping, though it will all need to be replaced at some point. Yuna Suzuki is keeping these features though. There is also a digital version of the game being worked on. My brother is helping me out with that. And yeah, as with any creation or business risk anyone takes, funding is definitely a concern. But at this point in time, I just want to make something that I think is cool, and once it's ready, I'll figure that out. Probably a Kickstarter or whatnot. And hey, maybe it goes somewhere, maybe it doesn't, but I'll have worked on something that made me proud, and that's all there is to it, really. So here is where I want to circle back to the discussion of sexualization and body image. I know, I have no studies this time, and I have no research. It's just a life update, really. The truth is that I'm a terrible YouTuber. Though far from perfect, I did far too good a job on the first video, and as of this point, there isn't really anything more that needs to be said about it. The discussion has been great, and I thank you all for that, but there isn't really a point in chewing the cud forever. What I really wanted people to see more than anything is that they have the ability to spark change, but it does take genuine sleep under your desk kind of effort, and yeah, it can be really lonely. I know, that's true for everyone who doesn't have millions of dollars to spare. And yeah, anecdotes aren't facts, but I think it's pretty funny that I started playing a game for boobs and ended up a World War II naval history buff. Also kind of telling him perhaps that the people that criticize games like Azur Lane and Nikkei for being shallow may be, just maybe, a little guilty of being a little, well, shallow. There can sometimes be more to these games than meets the eye, though what meets the eye is pretty good on its own, I've got to admit. Anyways, I'm really excited to share more about Project BB as it develops. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in hearing more about it. Stand with me and let's get this queen her crown. Game reviews are coming back. I think Bayonetta is next, so if you're keen for that, stay tuned. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.